recently read the book The 4-Hour Workweek by author Tim Ferriss. A 4-hour workweek seems like a fun fantasy but a rather impossible reality given how damn busy we are every day. Black small square, but in the book, Tim challenges the "I'm too busy" excuse. He says being busy is a form of laziness, lazy thinking, and indiscriminate action. He says we mistake activity for productivity and we end up doing work just for work's sake, which ultimately distracts us from doing what's most important and difficult. But by embracing two universal laws of productivity, we can learn to stop doing work for work's sake and discover how a 40-hour workweek can be condensed down to a 4-hour workweek. The two universal laws of productivity are Pareto's law and Parkinson's law. Pareto's law states that the majority of results come from a select few efforts. And Parkinson's law states that work expands or contracts according to the time you allot for it. Tim discovered the first law of productivity, Pareto's law, while managing his sports nutrition company in 2004 in an effort to stay on top of everything. He worked more than 12 hours a day, 7 days a week. On the verge of an anxiety attack, he decided to conduct an experiment. He simply stopped reaching out to 95% of his low-producing clients and fired the 2% that were responsible for most of the angry emails and late-night phone calls he received. He shortened his work week and focused his attention on building relationships with the top 3% producers and finding new clients that matched the characteristics of those top 3%. Tim says, "I went from chasing and appeasing 120 customers to simply receiving large orders from 8 with absolutely no pleading phone calls or email harangue. My monthly income increased from 30 to 60K in 4 weeks, and my weekly hours immediately dropped from over 80 to approximately 15. Most important, I was happy with myself and felt both optimistic and liberated for the first time in over 2 years." Tim discovered the power of the second law of productivity, Parkinson's law. After finishing a paper in college 24 hours before handing in a 30-page paper worth 25% of his overall grade, Tim received a call from the company. He interviewed for his paper and was told he couldn't use the information they previously provided him. This meant his entire paper was useless. He panicked and he went to his professor to ask for an extension. His professor called me, looked at him and said, "I think you'll okay with no other option." Tim got to work on a new paper. Miraculously, he found, interviewed, and dissected a new company within 24 hours and produced the best paper of his life. He discovered that the time pressure forced him to focus on execution and doing the bare essentials, which resulted in a better product without any bloat. Tim says, "If I give you a week to complete the same task, it's 6 days of making a mountain out of a molehill." When we combine the two laws of productivity, we are left with the following realization. Most things don't matter, and what matters most needs less time to complete than we think. If you doubt the first part of that statement, think back to yesterday and any success that you experienced. Black small square, which activities led to that success? When I do this exercise, I can only think of 1 or 2 hours of focused work that greatly contributed to my success. The vast majority of other things I did seemed important at the time but made little difference to the end result. Now think of your life over the last 5 years. Which decisions led you to where you are today? When I think about this, I can think of only a few key decisions that led me to the books, the relationships, and the projects that made all the difference in my life. Everything else doesn't seem to have mattered much if you doubt the second part of that statement. Think back to the last time you needed to complete your work before going on a long vacation. Did it seem impossible at the time? Did you get through it? Black small square, I recall a time when I was a project manager and engineer working on 5 major projects and needing to get through a seemingly impossible amount of work before going on vacation at the end of the week. Somehow I found a way to delegate tasks. I thought I could only do and tie up loose ends that I thought would take weeks to resolve, much like Tim. I realized that when faced with seemingly impossible time constraints, I have no choice but to focus just on the bare essentials and be highly resourceful. And oftentimes this results in a better product. Our minds will naturally fight the idea that most things don't matter and what matters most needs less time to complete than we think. So we need to develop a habit of challenging ourselves to think differently each morning. Get in the habit of simulating the following scenarios first. Pretend you've just had a heart attack and your doctor says you can only work 2 hours a day. Any more than that and you'll have another heart attack and die. Black small square, what few things do you decide to do? What gets removed from your day? Black small square for the second simulation. Pretend there's a family emergency and you need to leave the country tomorrow. No one will be able to reach you for days. What systems do you set up? What do you delegate? What do you make sure it gets done today? Despite how impossible it might seem, by running these scenarios each day, you sharpen your thinking, You prevent yourself from doing work just for work's sake, and you learn what it means to be truly effective. Making each hour count with enough practice. You'll start to see how you can turn a 40-hour workweek into a 4-hour workweek. That was the core message that I gathered from Tim's book.